The Reddit IPO may be just around the corner. Recent reporting by Reuters suggests Reddit could finally go public as early as March 2024. The big question is, will retail investors get a chance to invest in the Reddit IPO? And if so, should you? In part one of this video, I'll address those questions and we'll preview what to expect with the upcoming Reddit IPO. I'll release part two when the SEC filing becomes available. Reddit first filed for an IPO in December 2021, but it filed confidentially, so we haven't seen any details yet. By early 2022, the IPO markets froze, causing Reddit to become one of the many startups that missed the IPO window. We didn't hear much else until Bloomberg reported in late November 2023 that the company was testing the waters for an IPO again. Then came the Reuters report that gave us the March timeline, and it said that Reddit would seek to sell 10% of outstanding shares. Reddit's last known valuation was about $10 billion based on an August 2021 fundraise, but the November Bloomberg report indicated Reddit may seek up to a $15 billion valuation, meaning it's aiming to raise roughly $1.5 billion in its IPO. So what happens next? There have been quite a few leaks from Reddit recently, so there's a good chance we'll hear more from reporters before we get the details out of the S1 filing. IPOs usually complete about 4 to 8 weeks after the initial S1 filing is released. You can find the latest S1 filings on my website or at sec.gov. I'll embed a PDF version of the Reddit filing on my website when it drops. A few weeks after the initial S1, they'll update the terms, including the number of shares, the IPO price range, and more details about underwriting. At that point, they'll launch the IPO roadshow to gauge investor demand. Underwriters will price the deal the night before the IPO and allocate shares to brokers who will then distribute them to investors who indicated interest. Now for the big question. Will retail investors get a chance to invest in the Reddit IPO? We won't know for sure until the allocations go out the night before the IPO, but there may be clues in the initial S1 filing or amended versions leading up to the IPO. Typically, the Wall Street Bank's wealthiest customers and institutional investors get preferred access to IPOs, but in the past few years, regular investors with only a few $100s have started to receive IPO access. The first thing to look for in an S1 filing is references to online brokers that offer IPO access to customers. We recently saw SoFi mentioned as an IPO underwriter for the Instacart IPO last September, and again in January 2024 for the BrightSpring Health Services IPO. So if you see SoFi listed as an underwriter in the filing, there's a good chance they'll offer IPO shares to customers. If you're not a SoFi Invest customer yet, there's a link in the description to learn more. Fund your account at least 1 week before indicating interest. Robinhood is another broker that may offer Reddit IPO access. However, requests from Robinhood's large customer base will likely dilute the number of IPO shares available. Sign up for IPO alerts through your broker if they offer IPO access. Webull, TradeStation, and a few other legacy brokers may also offer IPO access. I'll put a link in the description to the best IPO brokers page on my website where you can learn about eligibility and restrictions. Brokers will start accepting indications of interest about 7 to 10 days before the IPO. You need to indicate interest and have cleared funds available to receive an allocation. Once you indicate interest, there's no guarantee you'll get an allocation, but we see fractional allocations more frequently now. For high-demand IPOs, request more shares than you actually want to invest. One last thing to look for in the S1 filing when it comes to IPO access is a directed share program. When companies file their S1 filings with the SEC to kick off the IPO process, they sometimes include a directed share program for executives, affiliates, and loyal customers. Since Reddit can attribute its success to its community members, it could use the IPO as an opportunity to reward them. This has happened before. Uber offered shares to drivers who completed a certain number of trips. GoPro offered shares to its customer email list. Airbnb offered IPO shares to hosts, and Robinhood offered IPO shares to its brokerage customers. Reddit has millions of community members, so many that a directed share program may not be feasible. Your best bet to participate in the IPO is to open and fund an account with an online broker that offers IPO access to all customers. SoFi, Robinhood, TradeStation via its partnership with Click IPO, and Webull are your best bets. The last question is, should retail investors invest in the Reddit IPO? Access is the first hurdle. Just getting access to IPOs is still challenging because of the stranglehold underwriters maintain on the shares. Access is getting more widespread for retail investors. But once you have access, that doesn't necessarily mean you should invest. The second part is due diligence. You must read the S1 filing, analyze financials, gauge IPO demand, and determine if Reddit is a long-term growth business that you want to own. The key to due diligence is to determine if the offering price is fair. Don't overpay for an IPO and don't chase overpriced IPOs after the debut. Well, that's all for part 1 of this video. At Access IPOs, I help retail investors own the world's most innovative startups before Wall Street. Sign up for my monthly newsletter to preview upcoming IPOs and learn about pre-IPO opportunities. This video is not a recommendation to buy or sell any startups mentioned. Pre-IPO and IPO investing involves significant risk. Conduct due diligence by reading the SEC S1 filings before participating in IPOs. Do not invest in IPOs with money you cannot afford to lose. I'm Craig from Access IPOs. Thanks for watching.